Ever feel like you finally understand a news story and then boom, 10 more headlines pop up and scratching your head again?
Oh, absolutely. That daily information flood.
You're definitely not alone there. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we try to pull out the really interesting and useful bits from all that.
Hey, Jack, think of that like your cheat sheet, sort of, to feeling genuinely in the know. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating mix of consumer trends and research, stuff that caught our eye from yesterday's Consumers.App podcast feed that was May 23rd, 2025.
Yeah, Consumers.App, they rounded up some really intriguing stuff, and we've done the deep dive for you. We're going to look at everything from how supermarkets are using facial recognition,
Which is a bit sci-fi.
right, and what the future looks like for grocery delivery, the surprising ways walking affects our bodies.
Yeah, muscle versus fat, that old chestnut.
Exactly, and the whole plant-based food scene, how that's changing. Plus, we'll touch on what's new with food allergies, some clever food combinations for feeling good, and even how tax relief might play into wage garnishment.
So the goal here is really to take all these different topics, pull out the key insights, those sort of aha moments.
Yeah.
So you can feel well-informed, maybe even drop some surprising facts on your friends without spending hours wading through articles.
Okay, let's jump right in. First topic, supermarket facial recognition.
Yeah.
Feels a bit dystopian.
Yeah.
The Swindon Advertiser on MSN.com had this headline, legal complaint filed against supermarket giant over use of facial recognition. So, what's going on there?
Well, the main thing, based on what consumers research highlighted in Consumers.App, is this legal challenge against ASDA.
Okay.
A privacy group is basically saying, hang on, you're using these live facial recognition cameras, potentially collecting and processing people's biometric data, your unique face print, without folks being properly clued in or agreeing to it. And that immediately raises questions, right, about whether this tech is following the rules, particularly UK data protection laws. So for you, the shopper, it means we might see more debates, maybe even legal fights about your privacy in places you go every day.
Like the grocery store. Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on how shops are using this tech and what your rights actually are.
It feels like just yesterday we were getting used to self-checkouts. How much has this facial recognition tech really moved on in supermarkets, say, over the last 5 years?
It's moved pretty fast, actually. If you look at the research landscape, like that 2019 study, Responsible Facial Recognition and Beyond, you see rapid development.
Right.
On one side, you've got potential benefits, better security, maybe more personalized shopping experiences eventually.
Yeah.
But like consumers research pointed out, the privacy risks, well, they get bigger with every improvement.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, supermarkets are adopting it more, but we're still wrestling with those same basic ethical questions, bias in the systems, what happens to the data long term.
So what are the specific privacy worries we should be thinking about here?
The big ones, according to consumers research, are kind of threefold. First, is your face data being snapped without you even knowing? Second, even if there's a sign up somewhere, is that really informed consent? Do you get what you're signing up for?
Probably not.
And the third, which is maybe the scariest, is this idea of mission creep.
Yeah.
Could that data be used later for something totally different you never agreed to?
Yeah, that's worrying.
Interestingly, consumers research mentioned a new tech, Pura, that popped up this year, 2025. It's supposedly a privacy-friendlier way using encrypted facial recognition.
Okay.
But, experts are still saying we need really clear policies, open communication, and strong legal protections.
And it's not just privacy, right? I seem to remember hearing these systems can sometimes be biased.
Yeah, you're spot on. There was a 2022 study, Is Facial Recognition Biased at Near-Infrared Spectrum as well, that looked right into this. They found that, older systems often showed bias against certain groups, but the newer systems using near-infrared light seem to be more accurate across different genders and races.
Oh, that's better.
That's a step forward, technically. But the researchers still stressed you got to be super careful about the data used to train these systems. Garbage in, garbage out, basically.
Yeah.
If the training data is biased, the system probably will be too.
So besides trying to catch shoplifters, what else are UK supermarkets actually doing with all this tech right now?
Well, consumers research reported that as of last year, 2024, UK supermarkets are weaving AI into lots of things.
Like what?
AI-powered self-checkouts, digital payments, those personalized offers you get.
Yeah.
Even optimizing stock levels so shelves aren't empty. Facial recognition is being trialed for things like age checks for alcohol or tobacco. And yeah, theft prevention is a big one. It's all part of making things smoother and more efficient using data.
Right. Makes business sense. But what's the actual economic trade-off? Does it actually pay for itself?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, on one hand, less theft means saving money directly, and efficiency gains can cut costs too.
Sure.
But installing and running this stuff is expensive up front. And like we said, if customers get spooked about privacy.
Backlash.
Exactly.
Yep.
That could hurt the brand, loyalty, even sales. It's a tricky balance.
So what's the way forward then? How do we make sure this tech is used responsibly?
Well, the experts feeding into consumers' research suggest some key things. First, supermarkets need clear, explicit consent before collecting biometric data.
Got it.
Second, total transparency. Tell people how the data is used, how long it's kept. Robust security is a must, obviously, plus regular checks, audits.
And following the rules.
Absolutely. GDPR adherence is non-negotiable. And maybe looking into those privacy-preserving technologies like Pura. Ultimately, it all comes down to trust, right? Openness and accountability.
Okay, let's switch gears. How we actually get the groceries. Forbes had this headline: "The future of grocery isn't on the shelf, it's in the value chain." Catchy. What's that about?
It's about looking beyond just the store, focusing on the whole journey, from farm to your fridge. Consumers research highlighted some really cool innovations in grocery delivery.
Like what?
We're talking AI that watches your pantry, maybe even predicts when you'll run out of milk.
Whoa.
Delivery robots doing that last little bit to your door. The Internet of Things linking everything up. Imagine cameras that can actually see your groceries and auto-reorder. Sounds futuristic, but it's happening.
So the whole business model for grocery stores must be changing massively then.
Totally. Digital transformation has shaken things up completely. E-commerce is huge now. Data analytics drives everything, optimizing stock, giving you personalized deals.
Deals.
Even delivery times are getting smarter. Algorithms figuring out the best routes, the best times for you. It's all about using data to be more efficient and, customer focused.
Delivery robots. Are we really going to see those zipping around our streets soon?
It seems like it, yeah. Especially in cities. They offer that efficient, contactless delivery everyone wants now, especially since 2020. Right.
Plus, they could cut labor costs and speed things up. Consumers research says they're already being tested and used in some places, mainly where logistics are tough and people really want convenience.
And what about the smart home ordering groceries automatically? Sounds great, but tricky.
Oh, definitely tricky. Big challenges. How does it reliably identify everything in your cupboard? Different packaging, stuff hidden at the back.
Sure.
How do you pull data from different gadgets? And maybe the hardest bit, predicting when you personally will run out of something. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
But consumers research does note progress. Things like real-time 360-degree vision systems linked to supply chains. So maybe reliable auto-reordering isn't that far off.
So if you're a business in this food supply chain, what are the winning strategies right now?
Well, recent academic research that Consumers Research flagged boils it down to a few things. First, keep making your value proposition better what makes you special.
Second, streamline how you create and deliver that value. Make it super efficient. And third, and this is huge, go all in on digital. E-commerce, IoT, data tools for everything from forecasting to inventory. Plus, keeping an eye on social trends helps too.
And it's not just the physical stuff, right? Managing all the product info must be a headache.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
That's where machine learning and neural networks come in. They can automatically scan labels, packaging.
Clever.
Improves data accuracy, makes inventory updates smoother, and helps you find stuff easier online. Consumers research says even older machine learning methods work really well here.
And finally on this, how much did that push for contactless delivery, especially post-2020, really change things?
It was a massive catalyst. Consumers research highlights it drove huge growth in online ordering, spurred interest in autonomous delivery, contactless payments.
Yeah.
Everywhere now.
Exactly. Grocery stores had to invest heavily in their digital setup and fine-tune their delivery logistics. And it looks like those changes are sticking around. Okay, shifting gears again. Let's talk fitness. GQ magazine asked, does walking build muscle, burn fat, or both? What's the short version?
Well, the interesting thing is it's kind of both, but mostly fat burning. Regular walking is great moderate intensity aerobic exercise, uses fat and carbs for fuel.
Right.
The WHO suggests, 2.5 hours of brisk walking a week? But consumers research points out even just 11 minutes a day brings health benefits.
We know walking's good for the heart generally, But does it stack up against, say, running or HIIT?
Scientifically, yeah, walking has a real positive impact on heart health. It helps remodel those mitochondrial cells in your heart and deliver the energy factories.
Okay.
So while it's not as intense as HIIT, it still delivers significant benefits, especially good for people who maybe can't do high-impact stuff, as Consumers Research noted.
What about the muscle building part? Can you actually get stronger just from walking?
This is where it gets interesting. Traditionally, no, we thought of walking for fat loss.
Yeah.
But Consumers Research mentioned recent studies, like a 2024 pilot study, suggesting walking can cause muscle fatigue and lead to neuromuscular adaptations, meaning it can help maintain or even slightly improve strength, especially if you're not already doing loads of weight training. So you won't get huge biceps from walking, but it does offer some muscle benefits.
Muscle fatigue from walking? How does that even work?
Yeah, fascinating, right? Another 2024 study looked into it. It seems like as you get tired, different leg muscles start compensating differently, and how your spinal cord fires up those muscles changes too. Researchers can measure things like muscle synergy, how muscles team up, and spinal activity to see how fatigue develops.
Wow.
That info could be really useful for tailoring exercise, maybe for rehab or older adults.
How do the body changes from walking compare to something drastic like weight loss surgery?
Well, studies on bariatric surgery show, big drops in weight and fat, big improvements in function. Walking alone won't give you those dramatic results.
Right.
But Consumers Research highlights it's still a really accessible, effective way to lose moderate amounts of fat and hold onto muscle.
Yeah.
So the key part of the puzzle for weight management.
And bones. We hear about weight-bearing exercise for strong bones. Does walking count enough?
Good question. Higher impact stuff like running or jumping is generally better for bone density. Walking is weight-bearing, but lower impact.
Yeah.
So Consumers Research says it still offers some benefit for bones. But ideally, you'd mix it with other things, especially resistance training, to really boost bone strength and muscle.
Are there better ways now to actually measure the muscle and fat changes from walking?
Definitely. Tech's improving. Things like T1-weighted MRI scans that give really detailed pictures of body tissues.
Okay.
Combine that with smart analysis like deep learning, and you get much more precise measurements of muscle and fat changes, say, in your thighs. Helps us see exactly how effective walking is for body composition.
Okay, sticking with muscle and fat, another classic question. Does muscle really weigh more than fat? Variable Health and Tech.
Health on MSN.com tackled this. Let's settle it.
Right. The key thing Consumers Research clarifies is this. A pound is a pound. Muscle and fat weigh the same, pound for pound. The difference is density. Muscle is much denser. So a pound of muscle takes up less space, less volume, than a pound of fat.
Okay, that makes sense. So you look leaner.
Exactly. You can gain muscle, weigh the same, but look more toned because the muscle is more compact.
And the metabolism boost thing. More muscle burns more calories.
Absolutely true. More muscle mass means a higher resting metabolic rate. Muscle tissue just needs more energy to maintain itself, even when you're sitting still.
Right.
So that helps with losing weight and, crucially, keeping it off long term.
So if muscle is so great, why is BMI still such a big deal for measuring health?
That's a really good point. BMI is just height and weight, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't know muscle from fat.
So as Consumers Research points out, a really muscular person could have a high BMI, get flagged as overweight or obese, even if they're super fit with low body fat.
Shows its limits.
Totally. Need more than just BMI. Body composition is key.
Are there better ways to measure that accurately now?
Yes, definitely. Like we mentioned with walking, those imaging techs like T1-weighted MRI plus deep learning analysis, they're getting really good.
Okay.
Consumers Research even mentioned a 2023 study with a few-shot segmentation framework. Sounds complex, but basically means much better accuracy, even with less data.
Sounds like AI is popping up everywhere in fitness, too.
Oh, it really is. You've got AI models now that can watch you exercise via video, figure out what exercise you're doing, even predict which muscles are working.
Rah.
Huge potential there for making fitness more personal, more effective, making sure you're doing things right, hitting the right muscles. Especially helpful if you're starting out or have specific goals.
And what's the latest research say about how muscle and fat change when we exercise to lose weight?
Well, recent studies using things like deep neural networks, highlighted by Consumers Research, generally confirm that inverse relationship. Lose body fat, and you tend to keep or even gain lean muscle.
Good to know.
And they're even exploring ways to estimate body composition using things like face photos and demographics. Getting quite advanced.
Okay, finally, on this biggest myths about muscle and fat.
Consumers Research flags two big ones. First, the muscle weighs more. Myth, nope, just denser.
All right, got it.
And second, the idea that fat can magically turn into muscle. They're totally different tissues. Exercise reduces fat and builds muscle, but one doesn't become the other.
Okay, let's pivot to what's actually on our plates. Food Navigator USA had this headline: Pressure Points, How Policy, Pricing, and Preference Are Reshaping Food. Sounds like big picture stuff.
Yeah, it's looking at how government rules, cost, and what we want to eat are all mixing together and changing the food world, especially plant-based foods. Consumers research outlines some big challenges there, like new nutrition labeling rules, changing trade tariffs, supply chain headaches. Think about how EU or US label laws affect how plant-based companies sell their stuff.
And consumer interest in plant-based. It's just exploded, hasn't it? Well, what's behind that?
Big time. It's driven by a few things, really. More awareness of health benefits, worries about the environment, impact of meat production and ethical stuff, animal welfare.
Right.
Consumers research highlighted the market growth projected to hit, $74.2 billion by 2027? That's massive growth.
So all these new plant-based products, are they all good? Pros and cons?
Good question. The pros are strong, generally lower environmental impact, addresses animal welfare concerns.
Yeah.
But challenges too. They can be pricier, taste and texture aren't always there for everyone yet, and there are ongoing debates about how healthy some of the super processed ones really are.
The ethics part seems like a big driver for some people. Does that actually make them pay more?
It definitely does for a lot of people. Consumers research mentioned data from a Swiss supermarket showing people were willing to pay more for meat and dairy with higher animal welfare standards.
Interesting.
So yeah, many people vote with their wallets on this stuff, though price always matters, of course.
How's this shift impacting traditional farming?
It's complicated. According to academic research, consumers research cited, on one hand, more demand for crops like peas, soy, oats for plant-based foods.
Okay.
But on the other, it's a potential challenge for the traditional meat and dairy industry. So you see some farmers looking to diversify, maybe get into growing those plant protein crops.
We've seen some big names emerge, like Impossible Foods. How are they? And groups like the Good Food Institute shaping things.
Well, companies like Impossible have been huge in making plant-based meat mainstream, getting into fast food joints, supermarkets.
Right.
And organizations like the Good Food Institute work more broadly, funding research, pushing for helpful policies, connecting people in the industry. They're really trying to accelerate the whole shift towards plant-based and even cell-based alternatives, driving innovation and awareness.
How do we track how well plant-based is doing in newer markets around the world?
Social media analysis and sustainability trends are key tools now. Consumers research mentioned using AI to track online chatter, searches, news, to see how people feel about plant-based foods in places like, say, Saudi Arabia. Gives businesses real-time insight into these evolving markets. Super important for planning.
Let's move to something that affects a lot of families. Food allergies. Greenville News on MSN.com had how to reduce the risk of food allergies. Here's what to know. What are the basics we need?
Okay, first up, know the common culprits, especially for kids. Consumers research lists them. Cow's milk, peanuts, eggs, shellfish, fish, tree nuts, soy, wheat, and now sesame is officially on the list too.
Right, those 9.
Yeah, they cause most reactions.
What about introducing these foods to babies? Used to be advice was to wait, right?
Yeah, that's changed quite dramatically. The science now strongly suggests early introduction is better.
Really?
Yes. Giving things like peanut products and eggs in the first year might actually reduce the risk of developing allergies later. Consumers research stresses that holding off doesn't seem to help and might even make things worse.
Okay, big shift. Now, allergy versus intolerance. People mix those up all the time. Key difference.
Crucial difference. A true allergy is an immune system reaction. It can be severe, even life-threatening anaphylaxis.
Scary.
Intolerance is usually digestive. Think bloating, discomfort from lactose, for example. Less severe involves the gut, not the immune system like an allergy. Consumers research says getting the diagnosis right is vital for managing it properly.
So if you do have a diagnosed allergy, what's the management plan?
Strict avoidance is still number one. Knowing exactly what ingredients to avoid.
Okay.
Then having an emergency plan, that means carrying an epinephrine autoinjector like an EpiPen if the allergy is severe. Medical alert jewelry is a good idea too. Interestingly, consumers research notes that allergy shots, immunotherapy, aren't routine for food allergies yet, unlike hay fever. Research is ongoing there.
We usually think of proteins in foods causing allergies. What about synthetic stuff, additives?
Good point. Most allergies are to natural proteins. But Consumers Research points out some synthetic additives, colors, preservatives can trigger reactions in sensitive people or maybe make existing allergies worse. Regulators watch them, but it's something to be aware of when reading labels if you have allergies.
Looking at the big picture, what can we actually do to try and bring down the number of people with food allergies?
Well, based on recent research, Consumers Research highlighted, a few things seem promising. Promoting that early, diverse introduction of allergenic foods in infancy is key.
Okay.
Better public education, knowing the signs, how to react, and clear food labeling is huge, helps people avoid their triggers. Plus, understanding the allergy versus intolerance difference helps avoid needless restrictions.
And that timing for introducing foods to babies seems really critical now.
Absolutely. The research from roughly 2019 to 2024 really hammers this home. Introduce things like peanut and cooked egg within the first year. Seems early. Regular exposure is a key protective strategy now for many common allergies. Don't delay.
Okay, let's talk about eating for wellness. Rolling Out magazine had this headline: Discover the 4 perfect food combos for ultimate wellness. Sounds tempting. What are these pairings?
Yeah, it's about food synergy, how combining foods can boost nutrient absorption. Consumers Research highlights 4 pairs with science behind them. Tomatoes and olive oil.
Heard that one. Lycopene.
Exactly. Spinach and citrus fruits.
For iron.
Yep. Beans and rice.
Complete protein.
You got it. And yogurt with berries.
Probiotics and antioxidants.
Perfect. That's the idea.
So what's the mechanism? Why do these work so well together?
It's all about how nutrients interact. Like you said, the fat in olive oil helps you absorb the lycopene from tomatoes. Vitamin C in citrus massively boost absorption of that plant-based iron in spinach.
Right.
Beans and rice together give you all the essential amino acids. And the probiotics in yogurt, plus the fiber and antioxidants in berries. Great for your gut and immune system.
How do these combos fit with general dietary advice, like from the USDA?
They fit perfectly. Official guidelines always stress eating a variety of foods from all groups. These combos are just smart ways to get more out of that variety. Like pairing grains and legumes, that's classic advice for getting complete protein, matching the beans and rice idea.
That iron-tipped spinach and citrus, that's super important for vegetarians and vegans, right?
Absolutely critical. Plant-based iron, non-heme iron, is just harder for our bodies to grab onto. So Consumers Research points out pairing it with vitamin C is a must for anyone relying on plant sources for their iron.
Is there solid research behind this whole food synergy idea?
Yeah, there is. Consumers Research mentioned a 2015 study on nutritional fitness. It basically looked at how nutrients work together in foods and found that certain combinations have a bigger health impact than just the sum of their parts. Supports that holistic view of diet.
And yogurt and berries, that's such a common breakfast. Why is it so good for us?
Well, Consumers Research explains yogurt brings the good bacteria, the probiotics for your gut. Berries bring the antioxidants to fight cell damage, plus fiber for digestion. The fiber can even help feed the probiotics. And the antioxidants add another layer of health benefit. So, yeah, powerful combo for digestion and immunity.
Okay, last thing on this. How do restrictive diets like paleo or Atkins fit with this idea of balance and synergy?
Well, Consumers Research touches on the potential downsides. When you cut out whole food groups like grains and paleo or carbs and Atkins, you risk missing nutrients and you miss out on those beneficial combinations.
Right.
You might lack calcium on strict paleo or get too much saturated fat and not enough fiber on Atkins.
Yeah.
It really highlights why a balanced, diverse diet with smart combos is generally seen as better for long-term wellness.
All right, last topic, and it's a stressful one for many. Taxes. CBS News on MSN.com asked, can tax relief stop wage garnishment? Important stuff if you're facing that.
Hugely important. First, understand what it is. Consumers Research explains IRS wage garnishment is when the IRS legally tells your employer to take money out of your paycheck for unpaid taxes.
Ouch.
Yeah, it can really hit your finances. There's a formula based on your filing status, dependents, standard deduction. Leaves you a minimum amount, but they take a chunk until the debt's paid.
Is there any way to stop it or prevent it?
Yes, thankfully.
Yeah.
There are tax relief options that can stop garnishment. Consumers Research mentions things like setting up an installment agreement to pay over time.
Okay.
Or an offer in compromise, an OIC, where you might settle the debt for less if you qualify. Or proving serious financial hardship could get it paused. Once the IRS agrees to one of these, they usually lift the garnishment.
What about interest on the tax debt? That keeps adding up, right?
It does. Interest rates are set by law, and they compound daily from when the tax was due until it's paid. Consumers Research emphasizes that even while they're garnishing your wages, interest keeps piling up on the remaining balance.
So it can feel like you're treading water.
Exactly. It can make the debt grow and stretch out the garnishment period.
And with national interest rates going up lately, does that make tax debt even worse?
It can, yeah. The IRS interest rate is often tied to federal rates. So as those go up, the rate on your tax debt can rise too. Consumers research points out this means resolving the debt could get more expensive over time because more interest is compounding.
Has anyone studied how well wage garnishment actually works for collecting taxes?
Yes, there's research on that. A 2024 paper, Taxation and Valuation, mentioned by Consumers Research, looked at tax enforcement methods. Garnishment is effective for collecting money for the IRS. But the research suggests it can cause real economic hardship and might even discourage people from working. Highlights the need to consider less harsh options sometimes.
Can you explain that compounding interest bit again? How it makes the debt balloon?
Sure. Compounding means you pay interest on the original debt plus interest on the interest that's already built up. So if the garnished amount each payday isn't enough to cover the new daily interest being added, your total debt can actually keep increasing even though you're making payments. It can really prolong the agony.
What are the wider impacts of this, especially for lower income folks?
Well, Consumers Research referenced a 2022 study looking at minimum wages and redistribution. It suggests tough collection tactics like garnishment hit lower income families hardest, obviously.
Makes sense.
Reduces their take-home pay even more, makes it harder to cover basics. Really underscores why strong safety nets and fair income policies are so important to buffer these kinds of impacts.
Wow. Well, that was a proper deep dive across a whole range of consumer topics, all sparked by yesterday's Consumers.App rundown. Thanks for breaking all that down.
My pleasure. It's always interesting to see how these different threads connect, isn't it? And how research keeps changing what we know about health, shopping, money.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about all that tech, especially the AI stuff weaving into our lives, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? With things like AI getting smarter and more involved, how comfortable are you personally with that trade-off between convenience and, well, your privacy?
That is the question, isn't it? Something to chew on.
Definitely something to ponder. For more deep dive into the topics that affect us all, make sure you like and subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.